All right, welcome to this week's episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dacian Miller here from Warrior Concepts. Of course, you already know that. It's in the upper corner. There it is. Okay, I have to get used to the cameras. Anyway, all right, so this week we're going to take a look at parrying, but we're going to go much, much deeper. Okay, I've got a key principle we're going to get to at the end that is part of this deep dive. Okay, but we're going to start at the place where most people start. Okay, and so as I usually try to start these episodes off, let's do this, right? Let's start with a problem. Okay, the problem that often arises for folks is that the way we define anything creates a limit, creates a ceiling, right? And it also directs how we think about something, how we speak about it or describe it, how we plan around it, and of course, how we act in relationship to it. That goes for not just our training, but every skill or aspect of our training. However we think about it is going to condition, or whatever we believe about it, our perspective on it or whatever, including whether it works, whether it doesn't work, whether it's bullshit, whether that's the coolest thing since Swiss cheese had holes, whatever, right? It's going to condition everything else that we do, okay? And parrying is no different, right? I didn't misspell anything, right? This is the Japanese, okay? So the Japanese word that we typically use for this concept is harai, okay? Harai, sometimes pronounced barai, right? And sometimes you'll see it written out this way as well, barai, okay? It depends on how somebody hears it and how they put the vowels together and whatnot, but it's the same idea. So Sensei, what's the difference between harai and barai? Nothing, okay? It's a linguistic thing, okay? In Japanese, the way things are pronounced coincide with the way the Japanese use their mouths to communicate, just like with us, okay? So if we were to tag the words in English together, level and land, right? One of the L's don't disappear. We don't say level land, right? We say level land, right? So the L gets held a little bit longer, okay? Same thing with the Japanese. The word that precedes, or the vowel or sound that precedes this word will determine whether or not we say harai or barai. The word itself, harai. But a lot of you, that is, especially in this art, if you've done any of the bojutsu, the staff work or whatever, right? The one technique you can't get away from, right? Hatsumi Sensei has always said, if you can't do ashi-barai, right, the leg sweep kihon, then you can't do bojutsu, right? I know it seems like a pretty sweeping, I'm going to get back to that word, sweeping statement, right? But once you understand where we're going with this, then you get the idea behind just doing a slugfest kind of thing and using this scientific approach, okay? So ashi-barai, leg sweep, okay? Well, how the hell is that a parry? Well, see, if we just kind of guess at things, or we just get one person's definition and we don't really dive into things, then we can miss a lot, okay? So harai, barai, like a lot of Japanese terms, have multiple meanings, right? Just like English words have, we just don't think about it, right? Well, but we just spell them differently. Not my fault, okay? They use pictographs, right, kanji, to convey these things, or they use sounds, okay? So the word harai, right, let's just do definitions, can mean to sweep, okay? It can mean to parry, okay? It can mean to prune, right? Like pruning a bush or pruning a tree, cutting something back, right? It can mean to banish. Ooh, that one sounds cool, right? I banish you from my realm, okay? And it can also mean to clear away. Okay? Like I'm clearing away, you know, I did a bunch of stuff. Autumn, it's autumn time here, and things are, you know, leaves are going to start falling and all that kind of stuff, right? So people will be out raking the leaves in their yard and gathering them up into piles and whatnot. So we're clearing things away, right? I had a house fire, right, almost 3 years ago, and you know, part of the project was in gutting the walls, getting all the damage out of there, clearing it all the way, so that we could start the process of rebuilding. Okay. So there's this idea of clearing away. Actually, there's a tie-in to Shinto and actually a couple of other spiritual traditions as well that use this term harai in some context, right? For those of you in the Bujinkan, there is a quote unquote prayer, not really a prayer, but it's this admonition or a poem that's done at the beginning of training. And then there's what sounds like a mantra, okay? And the literal translation is that we are dispelling evil. We're sweeping the negative away. We're clearing the clouds. We're clearing confusion. We're clearing ignorance, all those kind of things, so that we can build upon a solid foundation, right? But there's this more pure translation, right? And we've got this, if you know what a noden is, right? They're split curtains that hang in Japanese doorways or at windows, or typically in doorways, right? You often see these in, you might only see them in Japanese restaurants, depending on where you go and how you do things, right? But it has an image on it and whatnot, and you walk through this thing, and it's a Shinto-based idea where as you go through, Westerners will typically move it out of the way, like, you know, those bead things hanging down from the 60s or 70s, and clear it out of the way. But you're not supposed to clear it out of the way. You're supposed to walk through it, okay? And symbolically, it's supposed to brush off the negativity as you enter a new space, okay? That's the universal spiritual woo-woo kind of thing, okay? It's also hot and humid in those countries. And so by walking through things like that, it brushes the sweat off your brow too, okay? So what I found from the Enlightenment teachings is that whenever you get a translation or a definition of something, especially in that realm, there is usually both sides to it. Just like we have the Taizokai mandala that represents the material realm, and we have the Kongokai mandala that represents the spiritual realm. They're not separate. They actually go back to back like two sides of a coin, right? You got the head side and tail side. So in realms like that, or in teachings like that, what you often have, not always, or not often, almost always, is what you have is a universal spiritual reason for doing something, and you have a mundane everyday reason for doing it, okay? Because they're not separate, right? They're not separate, right? As a for instance, right, on the Toronoko or on the Butsudan, the Kamiza, whatever, right, we'll be burning incense, or we'll light candles, that kind of thing, okay? So the lesson is that you never blow out the flame on the incense or on the candle when you're extinguishing it, okay? You always lightly fan it with your hand, right? What's the point, right? Well, this big woo-woo spiritual reason is we don't want to impose our force, right? We don't want to do more than necessary to get the job done, right? We're not wasting energy, right? But we're also not forcing our will, that kind of thing, right? That's the grand lesson. The mundane lesson is if I blow the flame out, I'm blowing wax and or ash all over my my space, right? My decorative space, or on the kamiza or whatever, and I've got to clean that shit up, okay? So either way, either perspective, it all points to the same thing, mindfulness, right? We're gonna be doing the same thing here. We're gonna be looking at breaking this thing down into many different categories, but I've got a couple of lineage and training examples to kind of point at some of these things, okay? And we're gonna start from the omote, the obvious, and work toward the ura, the hidden, the mastery side. We're going to work from the gross, and I don't mean disgusting. What I mean is it's the way everybody thinks, and we're going to lean toward, if you got this piece down, your life gets a whole lot easier, okay? So again, but with these noden, right, these things that hang down, we have one hanging up in here. I think it's in the ladies' changing area, where it has this, it looks like a broom handle with what looks like a floppy mop, right? But it's not made of cloth and all that. It's these white streamers, or it could be grass or whatever. And they use these things in ritual Shinto ceremonies and things like that. And they'll shake these things. And the whole idea is it's supposed to be like cleaning the area. It's like except you're doing it in space, right? You're sweeping things away, sweeping negativity away, evil away, confusion away, that kind of thing, right? So what the hell does that have to do with anything, Sensei? Well, often this stuff here and all these translations give us a better sense of what the hell we're doing up here. But the other thing it does is if we just stopped at sweep or parry, okay, pruning, you're not moving the branches out of the way, you're clipping the damn things, and then I'm going to clear them away, right? But if I just dispel the negativity or I push something away, what's to stop it from coming back? So how do we do it in a way that literally banishes, right, the evil or the negativity or the jagwagon, right, from coming back? Okay. So again, maybe it's just, I think, weird, but if I do, some of you guys keep coming back every week, in which case, what's that say about us as a group? That we're paying attention to shit that most people don't want to, don't think about, have noticed, don't give any consideration to, or have no freaking idea that it even exists. That's what gives us the advantage. Okay. So again, there's this greater concept. Okay. So anyway, if we think about the way most people think about parrying, it's more akin to, like, if you understand American baseball, it's more akin, and I think they do it in cricket as well, but it's more akin to like bunting, right? So ball's coming in, and instead of whacking the shit out of it, right, we just kind of let it bounce off and pop, and then everybody's got to rush to get to this ball that's kind of a shorter flight. They all have to scramble to come in and do it, right? It creates a rushed, panicky kind of disorientation. It creates an opening, right, for the runner to get to base, to give him an advantage to getting to base without getting caught. Okay. So, but that's the idea, right? So most people think of, like, getting out of the way and just kind of parrying, right? Just kind of bumping it, deflecting it, create an opening so you can go in, right? But here's the problem. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. The bigger problem is that is such a conventional, common, everyday thing within many different fight styles and circles that you got to be trickier, you got to be whatever, right? So I have to hope that it catches him, right? Because if this guy's and it really depends on the kind of punch that's coming in, okay? So if he's coming in really, really tensed and firing up, and I bump his arm, right? Because it's tensed all the way to the shoulder, that's going to move more of him. But if this guy's one of these fighters where he's flicking out and I smack his forearm, it's just going to go away and come right back into center, and he's still on fire, okay? And then you're going to be on fire, and then you're going to be ashes, and then, right? So how do we do this in a way, and how do we think about it in a way that gives us the advantage it's supposed to give us, right? So one of those is we can start with the conventional, we can start with the common, but look at more options, right? That way, depending on how he punches or kicks or whatever, will allow us to pull the right weapon out of our arsenal, right? The right tool out of our toolbox, however you want to describe that, okay? So we'll kind of work through this thing. And again, I'm just going to throw a whole bunch of things at you during this one, give you a grand idea on this, but I want to come back to this key principle that most people miss when they're looking at parrying, okay? Because they see it as a trick. They see it as, they stop with, I'm knocking his arm or whatever out of the way and creating an opening. But my question is, how long does it stay open? How long does that opening stay? Okay, so we'll move in that direction, okay? So just very quickly, right? Again, today we're going to talk about 4 different body parts that we can use for parrying, but I'm also going to expand out, because if you're looking over here, you'll see that I have sword and staff and things like that going on, okay? So body parts, right? So most people think of using the hands, okay? Some people extend that up to the arms, okay? Some people, maybe, right? Legs, okay? And others, okay? Torso, or what we're going to call the whole body, okay? In Togakure Ryu Ninjutsu, in the 16 body weapons, right? What we're talking about here is Taiken. Okay? The body as the weapon, the body is the fist, okay, or the body fist, okay. So, and we can also be implying Shizenken. These are both on the list, okay. So Shizenken and Taiken are the list breakers in ninjutsu. In every martial art, what you'll see is a list of fists. You'll see a list of throws. You'll see a list of whatever, right? But they tend to be very finite, okay? Here's a list of our styles, way to do X, Y, Z, okay? Punch, throw, make a fist, whatever. In ninjutsu, almost always, as a matter of fact, I can't think of an example that I've ever run into where it was a finite list. It looks like a finite list if you don't know what you're looking at. So the 16 body weapons, right? 9 of them you actually make with your hands, okay? And then there's the head, and then there's the elbows, and there's the knees, and those kind of things, right? But in that list, there's these two. 15 and 16, in whatever order you want to put them, is Shizen-ken and Tai-ken. Tai-ken we've already defined, right? The body as the weapon, okay? So I throw this guy, and then I just fall on him, okay? Break him that way, okay? Shizen-ken, Shizen means natural, okay? So natural fist. What the hell is that, okay? What this is anything not on the list that you can use, okay? We're close enough, and we're like grappling right here, and I clench my molars, I shove him, I just hit him with the corner of my jaw, and hit him with that, right? Or I pop a shoulder into him, right? Hit him with the back of my wrist, right? They're not on the list, okay? So this takes what looks like a finite list and blows it wide open, okay? Teeth, all kinds of things, right? Okay? So however you want to look at this, right? But I'll give you some examples as we go, right? So if we're looking at hands, right? Again, we might move out of the way and just kind of slap it away. Some people just smack it. Some people more straight-handed, like a palm strike. Arms, right? Could be this bumping parry or knocking things out of the way. It could be the elbows to kind of knock things away. The legs, right? We have counter kicks, okay? So in our Mod 5 in our curriculum, somebody's throwing a kick, we shift out of the way and just kind of knock it off to the side, or we'll kick it a little bit. I'll back up here a little bit. Maybe you can see my legs a little bit better, right? But here's this circular counter strike with the arms, right? We do the same thing with our legs to knock it off to the side, or we'll shift out of the way and bunt it with the shin, right? To knock it, get him turned around. This is a big piece of the Gyokoryu, Jodyaku no Maki, the first kata on the first scroll, Koku, right? Shift to the outside, parry that leg, spins him around, come in with 2 Boshiken to the top part of his hip assembly, shove his little ass toward the ground as you draw your sword and finish him, okay? So, sorry, getting a little passionate, right? Okay, so, but we can counter the legs. You can use whatever words you want, counter, parry, sweep, whatever, okay? Now, this is just body parts, okay? We also, if you've done any work with the staff training, and I mentioned this earlier, right? One of the very first Kihon Gata in the Kukishinden would use Bojutsu, right? The long staff art. One of the 5 primary Kihon Gata is Ashibarai, right? Which shows you 3 different ways to sweep the leg as this guy's coming into attack. There's a certain type of timing that goes with it and whatnot, but what you're literally doing is sweeping or knocking his leg out from under him just as his foot is touching down or just before his foot touches down, and blasting it off to the side in one direction or the other to topple him, and then your next attack just finishes him before he hits the ground, okay? Well, that's the ideal anyway, if people could just pull themselves away from just doing the kata over and over and over again and actually breach the initiation and look at the damn lesson. But again, maybe I'm just weird. Well, I am weird, but you get the idea, right? So there's ways to do it with the sword, all that kind of stuff. Again, I have examples later on down the line, okay? So so there's 3 ways that we can look at this parrying idea as we start to expand it, okay? As we start to expand it, right? So one is this kind of knocking it away, right? So it could be just kind of a sweeping action, right? So Harai kind of bridges the gap on the omote side between, and I've done lessons on these, between uke nagash, what people tend to see as blocking, right? James, James on the other side of the room here. We'll try to remember to put a link in this description to the uke nagash lesson. That way it saves everybody extra work, right, of hunting it down and trying to find it. But I break uke nagashi out into what, James, 4 or 5 different ways to do uke nagashi, right? Or what you're actually doing to the person, just like we're going to do here, okay? And so we're just kind of moving it away or hitting him in a way where he kind of flinches. We're doing this normal knock the weapon off track, so to speak, okay? So uke nagashi, okay, is more in line with this idea of sweeping. Okay, we're still talking about parrying, but I'm kind of moving it out of my way. Okay, out of my way. All right. The next way to do it is more of a hard attack. It's more of a firm, damaging attack. Right. So one of the things that we teach is getting out of the way, and as you go to kamae, it naturally creates a strike. So if I go from hiro no kamae to jumonji no kamae, and my distancing allows this fist to pass through where his arm is coming, it creates a strike. Okay, so is that a parry, or is it a damaging, bone-jarring, bone-breaking strike? Okay, depends on if you just glanced it. Depends if you like hit solid square on that 90-degree angle, cause things to bow, whatever, right? Depends if you're in the middle of an arm where there's a lot of muscle. Depends if you're in this joint space right back here. It causes a hyperextension kind of thing, right? But either way, this is more akin to something in the scrolls called ken kudaki, right? Or ashi kudaki, or keri kudaki, right? Keri, kicking, uchi, striking, right? So it doesn't matter if it's throwing a punch, throwing a kick, whatever. We're getting out of the way and attacking the incoming limb. So this is less, I don't know, less passive, less like, just kind of swatting at a fly just to move him and create an opening. This is an intentional attack. Offline, boom, hit it in a way that it creates more of a jarring action, right? So now what we have is this ken kudaki. Okay, or again, it could be keri if he's throwing a kick. Because again, when most people think of parrying, they think of using their hands and arms against his arms. Okay, but we need to broaden that out, right? The more options we have in any situation, greater our chances of success, right? But we need to have a broader vision of this, and we can't just do it intellectually. I mean, you're listening to this lesson and you're taking stock, but until you get out on the floor and drill the hell out of this, to where in an actual situation, I don't care if with your partner, on the floor or you're out in the street or whatever, and you end up in a certain position, that's what comes out of your subconscious storehouse. Because if you have to think about it, you can't use it. Not under pressure when your left brain has packed up some luggage, and it'll be back when this shit's over. Okay, so if it's not in there, it's not coming out. And this speaks to these people that tend to troll the videos, not just mine, everybody's, right? And they put these bullshit comments. Not that they're not valid from their perspective, but they put all these bullshit comments and whatnot about that won't work, this won't. Well, of course it won't work. If you don't ever put it in and you don't have it as a part of your toolbox or your arsenal, you're right. It can't work if it's not in there and you don't have access to it. Okay? If you don't put it in, it's not coming out. But also, if you don't put it in deeply enough in subconscious, unconscious mechanisms, it's not coming out when your left brain is on vacation. Okay, so and again, this is why all the students in my dojo know, especially in my Shinobi Kai program, we don't practice until we get something right. You practice until you can't get it wrong. And you practice until you can't get it wrong unconsciously. That sometimes you'll do something in the middle of a mix, in the middle of a sparring kind of thing, and you'll do something and you surprised even yourself because you didn't consciously see that thing coming, but some part of you did, and you caught it and whatever. Okay. All right. So there's this sweeping, right? Knocking things out of the way, right? Parrying, whatever, right? Slapping it aside, right? What most people think of. There's this more hard version of it where we're literally attacking that leg or that arm that's coming in, right? And knocking the damn thing out of the way, right? So more akin to this ken kudaki or keri kudaki, crushing the punch, crushing the kick, right? But there's this other really cool thing that goes on, and you have to understand this angle that goes on, right? There's in the Ichimonji no Kamae, right? So we'll talk about this thing here in a minute, right? In this Ichimonji no Kamae, right? It looks like this, where the lead hand points just outside his opposite side shoulder. It'd be the same shoulder, right? So if I'm left side forward, it's pointing just outside his left shoulder, right? This one is in line because an Ichimonji is a long range Jumonji, and a Jumonji is a long range Ichimonji. See how my arm's not moving? I'm not doing this, right? I'm moving. It looks like I'm moving because this is compressing as I'm getting closer to it. But what you can't see is that I'm not moving my arm from the space it's in space. I'm moving to it. I'm not doing this. Okay? It's very different. Okay? So, but this angle is really, really important. It's the same angle. You know what? That's too much, too little contrast. Let's borrow the Shirisaya. Okay, that way it stands out better. Okay, I know I don't have my belt tied for sword, whatever. Okay, but if this thing had a handguard on it, right, the tsuba is in line with the sternum. It's not worn in the belt like this. You're wide open. The sword is worn in the belt with the tsuba, the handguard, on your center line, so the sword covers your body. So blocking is easy. Parrying is easy. Okay? But this, see the angle? Okay? If this were in that same place in space and I take up an Ichimonji and I put my arm there, okay? It's on the same angle that the sword is on. That angle is really, really important. Okay? If I am doing Jodan Uke with the sword, there's an incoming sword strike, there's an incoming staff or halberd or whatever, and I move into this position to guard. That angle is extremely important because he's going to hit it, okay? Doesn't matter if it's that or a staff weapon, pole weapon, right? And we move into this position, right? This angle is really, really important. If it's too much, it's going to break, and we're not that the staff is going to break, but the structure is going to break and we're going to get nailed. If it's too square, we're going to get hammered down on it, or a blade will go right through it and then right through us. Okay? But the angle is really, really, really important, okay? Because it creates a natural deflecting shield. Okay. One of these most recent classes with my inner circle guys online and with my upper level program here at the school, we took a look at this idea that Gyokuryu is close range, not the typical range that most people train at, but I mean you're like 2 shaku, about 2 feet, right? Your core from his core, so you're literally way in close, way in. I mean his forearm is resting on your shoulder. It's that close, okay? And then this arm is in and whatnot, and it's covering his next shot. So when he punches at you and makes contact with this, all that force that he has hits it, but he will glance off. It's a really cool thing, right? It's the same thing with your Jodan Uke, right? He hits it, and again, this is where you need to trust the art and pressure test your stuff, okay? So you learn the form, and then you start ramping up the energy and the impact so you can figure things out, okay? And when you figure this out, what you will find is that when you have that angle right, he will hit that sword or that staff as hard as he can, and it will hit and glance off and carry him with it, okay? So it's this deflecting angle, right? I could shift off and place my shoulder at that line as he's punching through, and as he makes contact, the width of his arm, it changes, right? And the width of my body, as that goes through, right, it will move him because of the space that's being taken up. This is one of the meanings of learning how to play in space, understanding how that works, okay? It's you can understand this also with a sword. Okay, the katana, you don't have to make a big cut. The katana makes its own big cut, and I don't mean by reaping. I mean by stabbing. Okay, if I go through somebody with a straight sword, let's pull a chokuto blade. Okay, chokuto, Chinese style, straight. Oh, that's not the straight one. My eyes are broken. Okay, so chokuto, right? Straight blade. If I pierce this guy, the cut, the wound, unless I do extra work, will never be wider than the width of the blade. But with a katana, I can go straight forward. I can do ski straight forward, and it starts here. But as the blade goes through, and I'm moving straight, see it? I'm moving, see my hand? Just moving horizontally. As I move through, I don't have to lower my hand. The arc of the sword makes the gash bigger. It's a cool thing, right? So again, understanding the weapon, understanding space, all that kind of cool stuff, right? This is the hardest for most people to get because, in my opinion, have been teaching for, let's see, from 1988, 89. You do the math, right? My experience, both with my own mistakes and watching other students, the reason this is the hardest to get is people don't trust their kamae, or they don't even get to not trusting their kamae. They still see kamae like stances, and they don't understand the magic that's inherent in these things, right? In the Gyoko school, the feeling in Ichimonji no kamae, right out of the scrolls, is I am so confident in my kamae that I can win with this alone. Okay? Well, what the hell happened to all the extra stuff? Okay? Our kata are based on overkill, right? What if that last move didn't work? What if the move before that didn't work? Okay? In our stuff, every move, every strike, every piece of the kata should be done as or like and should be thought of from the perspective of this will end the fight. And then if it doesn't, then you're in position for the next piece. And that should be done to end the fight. But not by putting extra force into it. Done, right? On a battlefield, you don't have time for 5 moves. Okay? You get tied up with this guy, either your friend is coming along and stabbing his ass or his friend's coming along and stabbing you. For you, the war's over. Okay? So anyway, so we have this more passive sweeping thing, right? There's sweep, parry, right? We've got this breaking, right? Whatever, right? So whatever you want to come up with this deflecting, right? We're clearing it away, right? We're not doing the work. We're positioning ourselves so that that happens. It's kind of like in our throws. We do have throws that are like other martial arts, the more omote versions, right? Like seiwa nage, the shoulder throws. We have things like that, right? But it's been my experience that most of our throws, they're nothing more than kamae and body movement because you're not grappling, right? And we're not throwing them per se as much as we're creating a situation where he can't stand up. Or we create a situation where his body backfires on itself and he springs out of the position he's in. You didn't force him. Because if you're forcing him, he can feel that. And if he can feel that, he'll resist it. And if he successfully resists it, he'll break it. And then you've got a bigger problem on your hands. And now you can never do that thing again because you just showed him your cards. Okay? So anyway, see how deep the fucking rabbit hole goes? Anyway, right? So again, right? Ichimonji, right? We've got this position where this arm is at a certain angle, right? This becomes very difficult to grab because he has to come at it in a weird way, right? It becomes, right, that just a flinch response creates this situation where when he runs into that tension, he'll get deflected or call it a ricochet, call it whatever you want, okay? It's harder to deal with. Whereas if I'm like this, that's a bicycle handle, right? Or if I'm like this, it's easier to knock away because when he parries it, that's my balance line, okay? It's very important, okay? The kenkudaki thing, right, with just going from one kamae to another, and that just intersects him to knock him out of the way. This sword and staff kind of thing, right, where we have, let's see, it'd be like this, and then the sword or staff is at this angle that when he hits it, it should be way up over his head, but when he hits it, it automatically creates this deflection. Okay, so here's where we have to flip from omote, the obvious, just knocking things out of the way to create an opening, and that's what a parry is, right? Okay, he comes in, I knock it out of the way, I have an opening. I knock it out of the way, I have an opening. I knock it out of the way, I have an opening. But again, for how long? Because if it doesn't do much, his natural flinch response, covered a whole episode on that a couple of weeks ago, right? When you go in for that next thing, he's naturally going to cover unless he can't move. Unless he can't move, okay? What if, you can do whatever you want, but what if this wasn't just about sweeping and pruning and whatnot, but what if we're banishing his ability to get at us? What if we're taking away his ability to move? Okay? And this is the key point in the kata ashibarai. Okay? Because when this guy comes in, I know the basic kata, we're both doing it and clacking sticks and all that kind of stuff, right? But when he's coming in with an attack, at or just before the moment where his foot touches the floor, I knock it to the side. And now everything in him locks up to not fall down. And he's in a weird ass place that he has to get out of. And that creates hang time. And that gives me more time to come in with that follow-up and just slam the shit out of him, right? Or if I sweep his leg in the opposite direction, right? His head's falling this way, so I need less effort to come up with the follow-up, catch his head on the way down, okay? I'm sweeping the leg, but what am I doing? If we can get away, if we can get our head away from the thing we're doing with our body part or our weapon to his body part or his weapon, and we can understand what the point of it's supposed to be, everything changes, okay? So the key point is dori. Dori. Dori means to catch, to seize, to take. Musha dori, muso dori, all that. Catch, seize, to take. All right. Okay. I've heard this described many different ways over the years, training with Hatsumi Sensei. People will describe things like, it was like he put me in a vice, cranked it down, and then he could just grab whatever the hell he wanted and pound on me. Okay. I was in a position like I was on the edge of a cliff, and I'm doing everything I can to not fall. And in that moment, I have to hope that he doesn't kill me. He did whatever, because I can't escape, I can't parry, I can't resist, I can't avoid. All I have is the hope that I won't die. Okay? See, this is not about the guy who's about to do the other thing. This is from the perspective of the attacker. Right? So what are we doing? Right? What we're doing is locking his spine. And when we lock his spine, we immobilize his feet. If he can't move his spine, he can't move his appendage as well. If we lock it and immobilize the feet, he can't step, he can't kick. If he can't step or kick, he can't evade, he can't counterattack. Okay? So, from my perspective, if you're really focusing on this, here's something to think about. If we get to a level of proficiency where we can do this, then everybody else's parry will accept that as an expedient backup. That's our backup. That's what happened. That's what I have to work with. okay? But everybody else's backup is their primary. If that fails, they're fucked. Okay? We'll re-edit that so that YouTube doesn't block us because I used bad adult words. Okay? But can we do it in a way that catches him? Okay? So the Jodan Uke, right? Kukisten Denryu, Bojutsu, Kihon Gata, right? Where we have this Jodan Uke, right? The attack's coming in, and I receive it a certain way. My body angle is a certain way. The staff is a certain way, right? He hits this, and it parries him off. He's losing his balance, and he's trying to catch his balance. But the other cool thing is that when it hits this, there's this slight flex that turns me around my spine. So the full version is at speed. He hits this and gets deflected and gets hit in the back of the head at the same time. Okay? But not because I'm avoiding the cut. Right? If you can avoid the cut, why the hell would you do Jodan Uke? Right? Jodan Uke is for an oh shit moment. That's why it's taught first when you don't have any skills. Learn this first because you're going to be in more oh shit moments than you're going to be in great moments, because we prefer to not block, right? We would prefer to avoid. If you can avoid, why the hell would you do Jodan Uke? There's only two reasons. You don't have any time or space to move, or you're teaching Jodan Uke to other people. Or maybe a third one, you're practicing Jodan Uke because you just learned it. Okay? But in an actual situation, if you can evade, why the hell would you do that? Makes no sense. It's like in today's world, when people fight fast in front, why would you take up a kamae where your fist, you've taken a fist and put it 3 times farther away from him than it would be right here? Why would you do that? Well, because that's what our style says. Well, your style said that from 13th or 16th century Japan. Meanwhile, back in 21st century America, UK, Australia, Canada, whatever, people don't fight like that. So learn it, and then, so does that mean I never do this? No, see, I carry my clip knife right here. So when I go, I'm getting my wallet, dude, just calm down. My wallet's right back here. See, it's between me and a non-existent wallet because I don't carry my money in a wallet, but because the majority of men in the Western world do, he'll believe me when I say I'm going for my wallet, when really I'm going for a click. Okay, so you have to put it in context. You learn it because you need to learn it. But to apply it, there's a whole shitload of stuff you need to go through. Anyway, let's get back to parrying. Okay, so Harai, Barai, at its root, right, means to sweep, to parry, right, to clear away, okay, like sweeping garbage out of your way. Okay, here he comes. Okay, not that I want you to think about any human being as garbage, but you get the idea. Okay, sweeping it away in the Shinto sense, right? We are dispelling evil. We're dispelling negativity, right? Bad juju, whatever. Okay, and here he comes. Here comes bad juju. Okay, get him out of the way. Okay, we can do it with hands, arms, legs, torso, whatever. We can do it to his arms. We can do it to his legs. We can parry his body, right? And again, this Friday, right, the virtual class that we do every Friday that springboards off this thing, we're going to look at a whole bunch of examples for doing this. We'll start with the obvious, and then we're going to move right into some of these things that most people don't think of. Okay, and that is just, if I just put my body in that space that he's in, it moves him away. It sweeps him out of the way, and then I have access to this other cool stuff. Okay. 3 ways, right? We can do it more passively, more sweeping, where we're just kind of brushing it away, right? The way most people do it, uke in the gosh, those kind of things, right? We can do it more firmly, right? Boom, we just attack the attack. And there's no better way to say it, right? We attack the attack, or through positioning of tool, well, it's the weapon, whether it's the arm, the sword, the staff, the spear, whatever, through that positioning of correct kamae, when he makes contact with it, he just deflects off of it, which means that we need to have more than soft training kamae. Okay? Yes, I'm making fun of people who don't want to mix it up. Okay? So anyway, there are examples in many different lineages. Ken Kudaki is also Kiri Kudaki, sword staff, Jodan Uke. This whole bo kata, ashibarai, right, is about, there's a timing aspect to it. It's about catching him in a way. If you're late, you'll cause a strike, but it's not going to do the same thing. What I want to do is create a situation where he locks up to not fall down, or he's fighting gravity and he's already falling, and I can take advantage of that, right? Imagine his head falling, right? His head's up here, and I do that strike for Yokomenuch, right? Side of face or head, anywhere up there, right? And I come up for this thing, right? That's where the swordsman can block. That's where he can duck and parry. But if I sweep his leg and he's falling, he can't defend. He can't protect any part of his falling body while he's falling. Okay? Every piece of him, well, at least 90%, is on bracing for impact, reducing the impact, whatever, right? But now think about power. And going back to the soft training I just made fun of. Okay? If he's falling, do I need as much impact or as much force to crack his head on the way down as I would need if he were stationary, and I need my staff needs to do everything? No. Okay? I'm a former traffic accident investigator. And the damage on vehicles, there's whole math calculations and whatnot to figure out how fast somebody was going and whatnot, right? But the damage on a single car, okay, that hit a wall, an immovable object, at 60 miles an hour, looks the same as two cars that had a head-on collision, both going 30 miles an hour, because they both contribute. So I can do half as much when he's contributing half to create the full thing. And again, this is doing more than talking, doing more than parroting somebody else's words, and it's understanding the damn principle. It's understanding the lesson. Okay? All right. So this is what we have. Another, just like I do every time, right? I'm going to invite you to come in for the Friday virtual thing. If you go to that, click on that, go to that page, you can sign up for the class. It's a 75 to 90-minute class, so give or take about an hour and a half, right? It's $4.99. That just helps me cover the cost of hosting and data transfer and the services that I use, right, to make everything free for everybody, right? It's not free, right? But it just covers those things, and we're going to be taking a look at more than just obvious examples, okay, to catch him, to seize him, to take him. So when you do it, not only is he open, he's open for longer. His body is stiffened up to not fall, lose balance, whatever, to counter what you're doing. It stiffens up. So when you hit him, that strike does more damage because he's not moving with it. Okay? He can't get away from it as easily. All kinds of cool stuff. Okay? So a parry is not a setup for your real attack. A parry is an attack. Then all you need is a finish. Cool stuff. Or sweep him to the ground, that holds your freaking weapon right at him, right? So that he doesn't want to move. Okay? All right. So this is, again, these lessons always point out the magic behind other things that people look at online and look at it and go, oh, that wouldn't work, or how about if I do this, or you know what, I would just counter that this way. Well, it's easy to tell me how you would counter a technique after you've seen it. But in real time, in that situation, not having seen it before, okay? All right, that's all I got. I'll see you next time on Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Show up for Friday class. Stop sitting around on your couch.